Hi, John Henry here again. I'm the director of YWAM Converge, a ministry in Ocean City, New Jersey, where we help uh, students to connect to organizations in order to get real world experience, completing missions projects in the fields of the arts and education and business and journalism and media and medicine and more. So during these 30 days of quarantine, the month of April, I have decided to give out 30 thoughts, and this is the thought for the day. This is the eighth day, and the word for today is prepare. Today is Holy Thursday, and I'm going to start with this text from the scripture where it says, "Then the day of unleavened bread, on which the Passover lamb had to be sacrificed, Jesus sent Peter and John, saying, 'Go and make preparations for us to eat the Passover.'" Typically, for Easter, we're running around getting preparations done. We're doing all the little errands that make for a very special Easter celebration. This week, we received in a box a beautiful set of flowers. These are tulips that were sent to us this week by one of Mary's nieces. And we're so grateful for that because it brings color to the house. And we have not made so many of the preparations we typically do because of this quarantine. We're getting out occasionally to do just the most essential food preparations, but we're not running to get colored eggs or candy or Easter baskets. And of course, we don't have younger children at home any longer, for that is no longer part of our regular celebration. However, we occasionally still color some eggs. We still do a very nice celebration meal. We typically invite family and or sometimes, and for years, international students. And we've filled the tables, sometimes as many as 25 people. And we get to tell of this marvelous celebration. The preparations are many, typically. Jesus had a lot of preparations. It was just a few days before this Holy Thursday that Jesus entered Jerusalem, and he was coming as a peacemaking king riding on a donkey, as was prophesied, and people waved their palms. And then he suddenly turned into a violent man when he entered the temple, and he became like a social reformer. He was tearing up the place with a whip that he created, and he started kicking over tables, and he was particularly interested in those that were selling doves. I find that interesting. So why was he kicking over the tables, and why particularly the ones with doves? Was it because they were money changers? That's one of the points. Yeah. Was it because they were poor that were somehow excluded? They couldn't afford, and the doves were for the poorest? Yeah, that's true. But actually, one of the expressions of the sacrifice of the dove was to prove maternity, which is to prove that you're Jewish. So could it be that Jesus was upset about a form of racism in the place of worship? It's quite possible. The purity of Jewish worship is exemplified in the sign that was between the court of the Gentiles, the outer court, and the placard that was before the doorway into the inner court, which said, "None but Jews shall enter here." And so you need to prove that you're truly Jewish, and to offer a sacrifice, a maternity sacrifice, was one of the ways that people did that. And Jesus, of course, said, "My house shall be called a house of prayer for all peoples." So there's a passionate thing going on here. This passion of the Christ begins with this passion for all nations. And the preparations that he's making for this particular night when Jesus says, that he eagerly desired to eat this Passover with his disciples. He made all kinds of preparations, and that's exemplified in that he sent his disciples to go and follow a man carrying a water jar, and then go to a man in a house and ask for the guest room, and there make preparations for this Passover. This particular Easter celebration, there are no Easter eggs at our house, and there's no chocolate bunnies. And not that those are important things. Jesus didn't have them with his disciples either, right? And for us, there's no ham, and I'm certain Jesus didn't have ham either. He had a simple meal. We know for sure he had bread and wine. And that simple meal was a place of intimate friendship, fellowship, and an impartation. He washed his disciples' feet. He spoke of the suffering he was going to experience. If you'll read the book of John from about John 14, 15, 16, 17, that expression there of what took place and what he was sharing with his disciples in preparation for his passion going to the cross. This meal is an everyday thing. You share a meal at your table every day. And Jesus wanted to say these words to these disciples of his, those he would had promised he would send his Spirit upon them, and they would become witnesses eventually after his resurrection. He wanted to be sure and impart this, not only his love, but he wanted to say that when you sit down to eat, remember me. Now, eating is one of the most mundane things we do. Americans pick up food and run. We invented sandwiches, basically. We grab food and go off to this or that or the other thing. And now we're in a time of preparation for a meal. And Jesus is saying, don't forget me in the mundane, in the everyday, in the things that you do every day. Make it a point to remember me. So in your preparations for this Easter holiday, we're not going to be going to a big church fellowship. We're going to be, most of us, sitting at home with our families. Do the mundane things, but do them in a way where you honor the Lord, you remember him. And we'll continue our daily devotion here. Thanks for listening once again. And if you want to check out my Thought Captivation blog, it's at johnthenry.com. And remember to wash your hands. Don't touch your face. Sanitize the surfaces and the doorknobs. And keep a safe social distance, 6 feet. And I'm sure we'll all get through this coronavirus season together. Till tomorrow.